Nadia, where not just football but all kind of sports extends far beyond the field, the role of football clubs and organizations in society has become more significant than ever. So in partnership with Summa, this panel discusses what it means for a football brand to have a purpose and the importance of social responsibility and community engagement.
I'm 42 years old and I've been in love with football for the last 40 years. I was a football player and I was lucky to play at FC Barcelona for many years. So I'm very excited now to be on the other side of the pitch as head of sport entertainment at Summa Branding, helping many football clubs and sport brands to have like inspiring and attractive and relevant brands. From this perspective, I'm sure we are experiencing now very exciting times in the football history due to the new opportunities football clubs and sport brands are facing in order to connect with communities, new generations through new brand narrative and experiences. Football is no longer what happens on the pitch. It's also entertainment, it's also lifestyle, it's also inspiration and culture. This is what we will talk about now. So let's get to it. I'm gonna start with Nadia. Nadia, you've been an inspiration for many people, especially for women. From your experience, what learnings or takeaways did you get from being a professional football player that any sport brand football club should embrace within any marketing or branding strategy?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I think in terms of, I've been fortunate enough to kind of play for some of the best clubs around the world. And then one thing that I felt was in common for the ones who was really successful in branding and marketing, like PSG or Man City, I thought they're really great in creating relationships to their audience, fans, target group, call them whatever you want, creating those relationships and then also somehow being approachable. When I say creating a relationship is, for instance, when we had media days, we used to be there for hours to do videos for Eid, Christmas, Chinese New Year's. I think this is to get closer to the people so the fans can relate to you. Once you do that, you have them where you kind of want to. And of course, there's also other ways you can do it. If you ask the new generation in South Korea, for instance, who they support in Premier League, most of them would say Tottenham because of Son. And so using individuals for branding marketing is also something that I know has been used a lot. And I think those are probably the two takeaways that I felt worked. And being approachable is something that on the women's side is really big. For instance, after national team games, some of us players will stay an hour and a half and take pictures and sign because you want to create that bond to your audience. I don't think that's really relevant on the men's side right now. But yeah, on the women's side, a big thing.
Thank you, Nadia. Sure. Let me move to Ebru. Ebru, nice to have you here. You are a reference in many aspects, mostly in the empowerment of women in the industry. The managers of the majority of clubs are men. From a brand point of view, what can women contribute differently and what can they add new so that football clubs and the football industry continue to grow and connect with these new audiences? What's your say?
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who chose to be in the room rather than outside networking this afternoon. And yes, for me, I wasn't as lucky as either of you to play football or come from a playing career. I stumbled onto football after 10 years in investment banking, and last 23 years, the same question has always been asked, why do we have a female board member, or why do we have a female CEO? I used to run Galatasaray for many years as CEO. There is an inherent prejudice and expectation that football belongs to men and should be run by men. Even women's football should be run perhaps by men. But more and more, it's more about how you take decisions and whether you represent or look like the communities that you are trying to sell something to, or hope that will be your fans or consumers at the end of the day. Since 2000, I've been sitting on several boards and have run a lot of organizations, and I think the presence I brought was one of a questioning mind. I call myself a paranoid optimist. A lot of the times what I see in my male colleagues or all male boards is a general acceptance. This is how we do things. But as women, I think we come in with a fresh, open mind saying, okay, you might have been doing things like this for the last 30 years, but how about looking at it from a different perspective? Or how about looking at other sports or seeing how we can do things better? And I also want to stress that diversity of thought increases the quality of decision making. And I've witnessed this many times in terms of especially crisis situations. So having that odd way of thinking sometimes really helped find better solutions for the organization. But we're seeing more and more as the fans are getting younger and younger, they would really like to see from their beloved clubs, beloved players, demonstration of more of values that are more important to their generation. And Gen Z is more about sustainability, more about equality, more about understanding, where things are sourced from, or, whether they will be able to reuse a cup that they purchased at the club or not. So it's very important, I think, to try and be close to your consumer base, to your fan base, to your, where you source your players from, grassroots, and have that stakeholder management perspective that needs to be engraved in everything we do nowadays in football, whether it's men's football or women's football. And the organization I chair, which is Women in Football, has 8,500 members. Majority are women, but we have male members as well, because they want to make football more equal, more accessible for everybody, whether it's on the pitch side, or all the way up in the boardroom.
Thank you. So interesting. I'm gonna move to Richard, so we can have a question for each of you guys, and then we can have like an open conversation about what you just raised, some interesting topics. Richard, you've been CEO of Servette FC in Geneva. Now you are the president of the Servette FCC, the women club. What's the strategy behind the management of the women's club in comparison to the men's one? What can you tell us about this?
First of all, hi to everyone. I think when we decided to launch the Women Project 7 years ago, we had to assume something. Our men's club had 100 years of history. And we need to assume with that you need to take that in another point. I think I'm the one who say that we're playing with the same rules that men's football, but women's football is another sport, because it deserves to be considered as a sport itself. And knowing that they have a different history, different growth than men's sport, and that's why we decided to create an independent company. And so we have the same ownership that the men's club, but we decided that the best way to develop women's football in Switzerland was for us 7 years ago to assume to create a new company. We know also that in Switzerland, in 2016, when we launched the project, we were also so late in comparison to the other club in Switzerland, and we need to catch them up. So knowing that, we decided to assume the fact to launch our own company, with the fact that it will be easier to get more visibility, more new partnership. We decided also to go and try to diversify the partnership. Obviously saying that why a lot of people ask us, why don't you go to the easy way and ask to the current partners to demand? And we say, no, we won't ask them. We want to go to other ones, try to open the mind of people, try to go to new audience. And nowadays, what we have, after 7 years of history, we won 4 times the championship, and now the men's partners are asking to join us. And I think we're also fighting for something else, because we're fighting to be good on the pitch, fighting to build an amazing academy, because we have the chance in Geneva to have an heteroclite community. But we also have to fight for equality. And when I say and talk about equality, is not first of all about salary, but first in Switzerland we have to assume that we have a special scholarship for athletes, but only for boys. And since this summer, because we were fighting for 5 years for that, we get to have the same thing for the girls. And I think when we talk about equality, we need to first think about having the same chance, and then we will fight for having the same salary.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to move to you, Robert, from Santa Lucia FC in Malta. Well, there are small clubs that know that from strictly the sporting perspective, they will not be able to have a greater impact beyond your borders. Are you considering working in other brand territories beyond sport to have greater local engagement and more awareness outside your borders? What can you tell us about Santa Lucia and your approach?
Thank you for the question. First of all, being from a small club, coming from a small club, from a small country, and playing, although top league in the country, but an inferior league compared to other European leagues, I think the challenges are huge. Even though the concepts and the philosophies and the management styles would remain the same as any other club, because you still have to recruit, you still have to do your marketing, you still have to do your engagement. The challenges are high. At Santa Lucia, we started 4 years ago writing a story, because I'm not saying negatively, but we had a positive shock that after 30 years we managed to get promoted to the top league. And for us it was a cultural shock, because it was another scenario. We started working on the foundations of the club, because we knew that now we have to face the reality of football in the country. So we tapped into a strategy, a long-term strategy, to build a strategic plan and improve our infrastructure. The challenges I mentioned before are not just football-wise or resources or financial or infrastructure, but sometimes they come also from authorities. When you are living on a small island, sometimes bureaucracy is too much. But we started on a project. We tapped on a law which the government had launched 4 years back, and we submitted a project to develop our training grounds into an educational sports hub. After 4 years, we managed to get our permits now, and hopefully we start the construction, because we believe that before you try to engage internationally, you have to build a strong relationship and strong engagement and build a strong brand locally. So that's what we are doing at the moment. We are working a lot to build our fundamentals. Basically, although we're still playing after 4 years in the top league, we managed 4 relegation battles in 4 years. We're still playing in top league, which gives us an extra push to achieve our goals. But strategically, we want to build this education sports center, which will focus on player development, which ultimately will be our identity and our philosophy and our business model because without having the solid grounds, you will never achieve sustainability at the end. So hopefully now we will make sure that we will follow our strategic plan on a long term, identify exactly the values of the club, and build a strong brand within the local market. It will be not mature enough to think internationally now, not for now, for sure, but in the long term, when everything will be, and the project will kick off and will be up and running, hopefully we can then think also internationally. Because although it is a small club playing in a small and inferior league, the potentials are still there, because you still have 12 teams from next year, and from those 12 teams, 4 qualify for qualifications to Europe. So the potentials for a good investments are there. So if you really build a strong and dynamic strategy and build around it, then I think you can manage in future to have a success model.
Thanks, Robert. You are absolutely right. It's not about size. Sometimes it's about having a well-defined strategy, an attractive identity, and a differential proposal. Absolutely. I'm going to ask you guys a few questions, but feel free to jump into others' interactions, please, so we can have a conversation. I'm going to go with you, for example, Ebru, but from your answer, you can, guys, feel free to add. What could traditional football or its audiences, Ebru, learn from what the women football is contributing to? What's adding? What's your view on that?
If we go back 2 tournaments, basically, 2 World Cups to 2015, the atmosphere in Canada was so different to what it was in the World Cup this summer in Australia, New Zealand. And you could tell both the increased interest in the numbers, obviously, needless to say, but when you went to the stadiums, you really felt that family atmosphere and the accessibility. As Nadia was saying earlier, of course, kids nowadays have their heroes, and it was really funny to hear this little boy jumping up and down, "Mommy, mommy, I want to be like Sam Kerr when I grow up," right? So it's just that it's no longer about your male player heroes, but whoever deserves that love, because they've been so amazing on the pitch, contributed so much to the success of a nation. I think your heroes can be from, you know, either side of the playing pitch. But what's important is also the brands that have embraced the growth of women's football in the last few years have come into an open blank sheet, right? It was a blessing when you think about it, starting from maybe only 1 or 2 sponsors where they had the space to themselves to really shape their activations and really own the space. And there's a lot of research around. I'm sure most of our audience have seen them. Women's football audiences actually care more about the brands that sponsor. They try to support them, they try to buy their products, and they want to ensure that the brands also see the benefit of working around women's football. Also, women's football has brought in new audiences. One recent study out of this summer, the Women's World Cup and the Men's World Cup in the UK, showed that there were 38 million who watched the Men's World Cup, but 26 or 27 watched the Women's World Cup, so not a huge difference. But 11 million of the 26 million that watched the Women's World Cup didn't watch the Men's World Cup. So it is a great opportunity to bring really new audiences into the men's game as well. I have a finance background, so I love when I can talk about numbers and stats. But another study that was done by ECA a couple years ago also showed that those hardcore fans like myself, I'm a born Galatasaray fan, we're only about 11% of the total population nowadays. So most of the youngsters are either big eventers or they follow their favorite player wherever they go. So there is no loyalty to the team, but it's really to the player. Or they just stick with their friends. If their friends are going to a match this weekend, they will. If they're not, they'll stay home and do something else. So how are we capturing these fluid fans, I think is the question. On one hand, it is a great opportunity to lure them into first women's football, maybe that their values are more aligned there, and then try and maybe bring them to watch other sides of football as well. So I think, in short, women's football doesn't have to follow in the footsteps of men's football. We can take very different approaches, especially taking into consideration the demands of the fan base, and try to feed in the way they want to be fed the content.
Sure. Does anyone, Richard, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, Reverend, because when we built the project, we saw the project as a rocket. And when you build a rocket, basically you have to begin by the bottom, what means the grassroots. But we knew, as I told it before, that we were late in comparison to the other club. And we decided to build the rocket by the top. And people were surprised, but I say, okay, we need to build it by the top. Why? Because the top is the first team.
Yeah.
Bringing people from abroad will help us to grow all the rest of the club. What I decided also 4 years ago when I took the CEO role of the men's club is to involve all the communication teams in the women team also. Because I say, okay, if we give them the visibility they deserve, the girls and boys, as you say, will have the proper heroes they want in women football. And that will bring us new partnership, that will bring us the will to the young players, also with the new broadcasting of Champions League, of the World Cup for girls to just enter in doing football. And we'll then build the rest of the rocket from the bottom. And now at the time is working, so we are lucky. I always say we're lucky because we are the ideal, but at the end, the reason of being of the club are the players. And we have to be really humble when we lead a club, because the only reason of being, and maybe COVID helped us to show this, that, and I told it every day to my administration team, I say, COVID has a good point. It shows that without games, we're not here anymore tomorrow. And that show you that the only reason of being is not the commercial, not the communication manager, but there are the players, men's and women's. And I think I love the way you see it, and you're happy to see boys having women as heroes, but just giving them the possibility to be the heroes is the work from the administration, and work that we need to invest first, and then we have partners arriving with us. So totally agree with you.
Yes, Roy, you want to say something?
Just a small note on women's football in my country. Last month we celebrated 20 years of women football. Still a long way to go. For example, not every club has its women team.
Mm-hmm.
But we managed to great steps forward in 20 years. Last Saturday we also qualified from Nations League C to Nations League B, so it's an achievement for us. We have, I think, more than the men's team players playing abroad, which also is a positive sign, and with top clubs. So I think there is a room for more success. I think they already did a lot of more success in 20 years than the men's team. But one thing I noticed is when it comes to fans, it's that women's football, they put together the whole country, the whole community, not much similar to the men's, when there is an encounter that supporters not fight, but there is the sporting element between them. But I realize that women's football is more of a community fan engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is nice, because at the end, football is about that spirit of sports at the end. And I think like she quoted it exactly that there are studies which see that women's football in few years' time will boom.
Sure. Wow, you're bringing so much interesting topics that I feel that we would need like a 1 more hour to deep into them. But so interesting. Let me go um, to Nadia. But I just wanted to ask you, Nadia, what's your view, or how can a club or team stay relevant and also inspire the community? You just mentioned, Robert, the community, the power of the community behind a football club or a team, which is obviously one of the core elements of the brand. How can inspire the community on a global basis, even in regions where football might not be as popular as other sports, by perhaps promoting the culture side of it? What's your view, Nadia?
Yeah, great question. I think, obviously, football is a very powerful tool, and it will be easier if you had a winning team and superstars. It's easy to brand and be relevant. But there's also other ways to stay relevant, and you can tap in fashion. I can, like right now, think of 2 examples. One of them is probably not a lot of you guys know it, Venezia FC, which is a team from Venedig who plays in the Serie B. Traditionally, we used to play in the in the best league, but why they've become like almost like a fashion icon among football fans is because whenever there's a jersey drop or a new design of a jersey, they make something out of it, and their jerseys are all sold out like instantly. So that's a great way to do it. And also, if I don't know how many of you guys been following Wrexham, the team from Wales, I think the way they've promoted or branded the team is brilliant. They went from Conference League to now playing in the second league in England. And I think the reason, it's not because of football, it's about like obviously Netflix documentary and having a famous person like Ryan Reynolds around the team. And secondly, I think they tap into the community again, and they got the entire city community behind the team. And now I'm following them, not because of the football, because of their adventure.
Yep.
And I think that's a brilliant way to do it. You just have to be a bit, creative. There's always alternative ways. But of course, easiest way is to be a winner.
That always helps,
Yes.
right, when the ball gets in. But it's true. You cannot depend on sports success because sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. So you need to work on other layers of the brand where the community, of course, at least from my perspective, should be one of the cornerstone of the brand proposal, to involve the community, to understand what their motivations are, what their, how can I connect with them, but also how can I grow my community and to reach new people, more people, like through sport, perhaps I cannot do it.
Yes, definitely. As you said, I think sports has a huge power, and then when you start, doing stuff that it's beyond like sports, that's where I also like, that's the stuff that interests me as well, using it to do more than just like playing football, playing basketball. And for me, I think the biggest clubs around the world, the ones that I feel I want to follow and support, have, they do so much more than just sports. Have foundations, try to give back to community, have so many programs to help get people involved. And this is, again, going back to your first question when I said creating a bond. That's the best way to brand. Create a bond and be authentic with your values. Because at the end of the day, again, I want to, people who are authentic and have values that are aligned with mine. And it's so something that's gonna, stay. It's not just gonna happen because you're popular or you just jumped on a wagon that everyone else is on. No, you're here to stay because your values are, authentic.
Definitely, that's
Can I just add to
of
that?
course.
I
Go on.
completely agree, especially intent is so important, and it again boils back down to who are your owners, who are your decision makers in the boardroom, who is running your club, right? And Angel City obviously is a big example. Their whole purpose was to be integrated with the community, give back to the community, and their whole drive to, you know, get a sponsorship but pay back 10% into the community, I think brought in more and more sponsors and more spectators. And equally, if you again look at Premier League as an example, currently only 11% of the board members in the Premier League are female. And there are actually, out of the 20 clubs, 11 who have no women on their boards. But those who do have a board member or have half and half almost executive teams are also doing a great job in terms of women's football, because they're not doing it just to tick a box, but they're doing it sincerely to drive attendances, to drive sponsorships. And look at Arsenal, you know, who recently again broke another attendance record. Equally, Manchester City for a very long time, like you, has been marketing, giving equal airtime on their social media to men's and women's. So it really starts at the top. The owner, maybe the CEO, maybe the chair, sets the tone for the rest of the organization.
Sure, I totally agree. I think we are running out of time. I think we have 4 minutes left. I'm gonna ask a question like for you all, just to get your view on that. Thinking more about brands, not just about clubs themselves, what are they missing if they want to stay relevant in the next coming 10 years? What's your message that you want to send out to, you know, to brands related to sport? Richard, if you want to jump in on that matter.
I think for us, the goal would be to stay a model in Switzerland. Obviously, a model means being one of the first and the best club in Switzerland, but not only on the pitch. I come back to that. I think we need to be a model of the pitch mainly, and that means we know that today we can talk about Servette or technical staff is only men, because we want the best for the players and the people with the most experience on the bench. But that means we have a duty. And since 5 years, we are the club in Switzerland. We have the more and more trainer every year form and women trainers, because I think we have the duty to help them to get those paper and those diploma from UEFA to be the next one on the market. I think that now if we compare it, the Swiss Championship and the Swiss League, we have there is 10 teams and we have 2 women on the bench and 8 men. But if we compare the people who have the diploma to coach, is 1 woman for 40 men. So at the end, we're growing on this, and we need to reach in 10 years, and I hope so, that we were just looking for profile and not a man or woman. And I think if we will have this discussion in 10 years without talking about men or women, we'll reach maybe something interesting.
Thank you. Robert, what's your say about this? What's missing?
I think many of the clubs, we've seen a lot of clubs with recently with financial problems. I think one of the most important things is sustainability. We don't have to think always how to win the next game, but we have to think how our revenues and our generation of revenues and expenditure does not, the expenses on, for example, payroll and wages is not much more than our revenue, because then we will face problems. So we've seen this. There is a lot of hearsays going around on systems which maybe will be introduced on financial fair play. We saw the financial fair play. So I think sustainability is one of the most important things.
Thanks. Nadia, what's your demand for to brands? What's missing?
I think being authentic, you know, as Ebru was saying, you know, sometimes I feel, especially in the women's side, you do a lot of things just for show. It's not pure intentions. You do it to tick the boxes, but it doesn't really gonna change anything, and it's gonna be temporary. If you really want to do something that's gonna staying for a long time and it's going to bring the change. It has to be authentic, it has to come from a good place, because that's, for me, only way that it's going to stuck.
Ebru, you want to add
For
something?
me, it's really understanding who your stakeholders are and holding the pulse and ensuring that there's something in the brand for every one of your stakeholders.
Thank you. We ran out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure to share stage with you guys. You raised amazing topics. As I said before, I could stay like hours talking to you guys. So hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.